Hello and welcome back to the Forgotten Continent. It's been a very long time since the last episode, but don't worry, lots has happened in the year or so since the last episode. And as you can spot whizzing around at the back, we've actually got a brand new ride today, a brand new land, and an extended completed queue for Odysseus. I really hope you enjoy the walkthrough we have today, and I actually think it's going to be really nice to go back to this magical place. So the first stop on our journey is Odysseus, and as we get towards there, we've got to try our best to ignore the large blue structure off to the right. That is something we're coming back towards at the end of the video. For the time being, we're going to be entering into Odysseus to see the new changes there. It now has a completed queue line that wraps all the way around this facade, and actually, if you ignore the blue building off to the left, wraps around to the front, and you can see through the window there, that's actually now going to be the new station. So all complete into one centre, so we might as well have a little walk inside now. So the entranceway to Odysseus still enters through this sort of colourful temple on both sides, and then enters quite a traditional Greek interior here, with custom lamps along the ceiling, and generic clutter along the side. Obviously Planet Coaster clutter just tends to be boxes and tables, and that's exactly what we got here. Now as the queue re-enters this sort of switchback cattle pen here, you'll also notice that we now have a cave entrance at the end. And if we just enter through these doors, you'll notice how it sort of arches over and goes underneath the ride itself. And if you have a little look through the ceiling, you can actually see the bottom of the ride, although this will probably be all plugged up and themed when they're actually completed with it. And just ahead we have a little shrine here, which I can imagine that travellers passing through on the Odysseys would actually leave little offerings to. Make of that what you will. And now we enter the final part of the queue line. That's the bit I'm most excited about as well. And if you actually look to the left here through these windows, you can actually see that's the way we enter through the queue. So you get a little preview of what's ahead when you come to the end of the queue line here. Now this section of the queue line is very, very thoroughly inspired by the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland Shanghai. And you can really see that coming across in the lamps in the roof, the custom ceiling, as well as the arched vaulting that we have running throughout this station here. I'm super happy with how the lighting came out as well. This is using a mixture of the teal and orange, which I've talked about quite a lot in this series, and also pulling through using some dark colours, like almost near blacks in the lights, to really create this realistic feeling setting that really surrounds this whole atmosphere here. And as we enter this final part of the queue, walking forward here, you actually get to see that we enter the front of the facade, and that is the sort of ruined temple building that was inspired by mythos, and we can peek through the windows here and actually see the main plaza where we started off at. So this queue has a lot of places where you can observe out into the main square, and actual people in the main square can look into the queue as well, to sort of judge how long it actually is as well. And as we come back round and pass under these coloured flags here as well, we'll actually see that we have a loading station here, with 3 bays for each row. Although actually, thinking about it, I'll probably need a 4th row, because these cars have 4. But let's go and have a look at the station. And this is where you can really see the inspiration being drawn from Disneyland Shanghai. These large vaulted ceilings with hanging flags and hanging lamps as well. I really want to get a sense of this very big cavernous space, which I hope really comes across in the ruined walls, the arched ceilings, and also the broken down portcullises with the hanging ropes as well. This really does feel like a grand entrance to this big adventure. And as we hop around here, we can see we've also created an unload station next to our onload station. So in a realistic setting, this would allow for a boat to offload it and then onload as well. And you even get views into the last section of the queue, as we look through into this final section here, with all the boats lined up and ready to go. And I thought, why not as well give ourselves a custom operator, just to really sell the theming of this place as well. So there is an animatronic sitting there who will be operating the ride, but there's also windows up above to look over the whole thing. And that is the queue building for Odysseus. And now we move on to what is undoubtedly the largest part of this update, and that is the brand new ride and land which is just hiding behind these trees here. And this is a land that's themed around Vikings and Norse mythology. And this is a really big challenge for me. I wanted to try and create a land in which wood could be interesting, stone can be interesting, and I'm really happy with how it's come out. And as we cross under this stone bridge here and avoid the janitor on the route, we're going to get our first glimpse of Völuspá. Now, Völuspá is inspired by a ride called Goldrush at Slagharan. It's a very similar layout with just some slight deviations in this one. And I really wanted to expand the feeling of Goldrush into a full themed land, and obviously move from the Western theming to Viking theming, which is quite a big transition. Now, Goldrush is actually a Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, but the Infinity Coaster that Planet Coaster provides does not do the triple launch system, which I really needed for this. So I've had to opt for a Premier Rides instead, but actually I don't think it makes too much of a difference. And as you can see it hurtling around here, it actually makes for quite a peaceful wooded area. Now, our first stop on our tour is going to be going over to this little shack on the left here, which is a small food and drink kiosk which sits right next to the main launch of the station. Probably won't be the most peaceful part of the park, but it does give you spectacular views of both the coaster exiting and entering its first element here, which is I think it's probably an inverted top hat is the best way to describe it, and also gives you good views of the main huge Guildhall, which is off to the right. Now, as we turn around here, we can actually see the start of the queue and the way that the coaster really closely interacts with the path that goes all the way around. This is a very different kind of build for me, because this is one without one central sightline. In fact, what I really want to opt for here is 360-degree theming, and that includes little details like this little river that runs between the path and the queue line here. And I think I kind of captured quite an interesting feeling here. It's actually very closely inspired by a game called For Honor, and For Honor has really driven the inspiration behind what you'll see behind the main entrance here, which is the massive Guildhall I mentioned before. Now, this is probably one of the most ambitious structures I've ever tackled in Planet Coaster. Something like 6,000 pieces to complete it. And that was just mainly in the custom roofing, the small details within it, the tiny shields and small Viking detailing. Because I set out in this project to really make intricate wooden details come through in Planet Coaster, which can be very hard to do. And obviously my PC is not loving this at all. And as we cross over towards the lake here, this actually gives you a nice view of the curvature of the roof as it comes out, and the way that the coaster ducks and dives through a head chopper just underneath the main building. So I'm really happy with how this has come out. Now, one of the major challenges on this change of through approach is by creating these small sight lines that are separate from a main weenie. Now, the first thing we have here is actually entering underneath the entrance archway where the coaster completes its final helix. Now, this is a very small archway where we have small dragon heads, or they could be horses, made out of wooden brackets, and then we pass under what I think is probably closely related to the world tree, which is a very pertinent image in Norse mythology. And that tree itself is surrounded by these small runes that go all the way around, or about as close as I could do to accurate runes without just completely destroying the piece count. And as you can see, the way the wooden queue wraps around here, we can actually see the little charms that hang from the tree and would actually blow in the breeze, if there was a breeze in Panko, that was. And then we get the first view of the main structures here. And I really wanted to build up this very compact, close layout. And as I'll show you at the end of the video when I do a little overview, you can really see how small this area is. And that means small things like the camelback here and the shed here, the ruined shack in which the coaster blasts through. These are all so close together, and it really gives you a good sense of the scale and the speed of the coaster that surrounds you. Also, with the increased emphasis on landscape variation, this actually allows for really cool sightlines here where we actually dip underneath the first launch of the coaster, and it gives you great views of the Sidewinder, the camelback, and also as we can enter this little cave section here, a very simple thing with a couple of wooden beams, just something to fill the space here. Now, this is where the queue really comes into its own though, as we pass over here into this sort of bridge that crosses across, and it acts as a piece of theming, but also another head chopper on this very head chopper intense ride, where the first launch will drop, the first element will actually drop under. Now there's some buildings on the right which we'll be coming to in a second, but our main focus is going to be heading up straight forward into this very peaceful part of the Viking village with a small Viking hut just ahead and a nice little skull statue off to the right. Now this small little hut is actually drawn from a piece of concept art I managed to find online, and I really enjoy the scale of it and the use of wood and stone on it as well. And you can even notice how there's the small little pillars that make up the decking. They're actually made out of the netted light pieces, but with the actual light bits hidden inside the building. And there's a huge amount of texture and variety to this very, very small space, because I think if the guests are going to come super close to this building, we might as well push it to the most detail as possible. And as we spin around and get a view of the turnaround there, we can actually see the facade off to the side here, also including a little fire exit, just in case things get a bit hectic within here. But this is probably one of my favourite sight lines within this new section of the park, and that is when you turn around and head back towards the main section. You get a great view of the coaster interaction with the bridge going over and the way the path comes up and down this hill. And this is what adding a little bit of height variation to your landscape really can add. It's these really lovely sight lines where you feel all surrounded on all sides by theming, especially when you look up to the left and you see the back end of the main station building there. But now we're about to enter what's probably my favourite part of this new queue, and that is the interior of the Guildhall itself. And as we see the coaster rush past here, we're going to enter that final section now. So passing up these final set of simple steps here, we actually get to enter the Guildhall itself. I am super happy with how this section has turned out, mainly due to, again, that use of lighting, and actually how we finally managed to achieve an interesting use of wood within this game. Now the main point of this section here is to really build up anticipation for the ending of the ride and complete that Viking theming, as you can see from the custom-made shields at the top, the tiny shields off the left, the closest thing we have to a pig roasting on an open flame, and even when you look off to the left and you can look back into the queue, very much like what we did with Odysseus, we get a nice view back into the main section of the queue. And even if you look through this window here, you can see the cabin we just passed a second ago. The throne room was actually something that I just couldn't believe how well it came out. This simple combination of World's Fair pieces, Ghostbusters pieces, and a lot of the base game stuff as well has really culminated into just a very interesting room. And the throne itself was just made out of just a mixed mass of pieces, with the carpet actually being made out of roses coloured grey. And as you can see now, I'm just going to quickly change the time, and you can see something special when you look through the window. And that is the sun setting directly behind the skull statue itself. And with a quick spin around and a scream of my computer as well, we get to see the other half of the room, with this nice vaulted ceiling, the hanging flags as well, and chandeliers. I actually think this room would work really well as a pre-show if I had the time or the patience to be able to use the coding system within this game to do that. But I do think this gives you a really good sense of the final section of the queue, and I think we'll build up quite a lot of anticipation for the main ride, which we're going to enter right into now. Now, the final station design came out as a bit of a compromise between the huge vaulted building outside and its many pieces, and wanting to retain the actual essence and feeling of that vaulting within inside. So it meant it had to be quite a large queue building, something on the scale of what you would find within Disney. And I'm very happy that's how this came out. Unfortunately, due to lag issues, I'm not able to have people in this building. But the way the lighting works within this space, it really makes the whole feeling very cinematic. And I think it might be one of my favourite station buildings I've ever created, with a huge amount of detail on either side, loads and loads of pieces and repeated elements that I brought in earlier in the ride. I do think this has really come together as quite a complete sense of feeling, as we see the car just hurtling through as well. And if we were to quickly hop over the tracks as well, spin around, ignore the empty bits, you can see that we've built a raised platform going around the outside, and although we're missing a flag right there, I do think this gets a good sense of scale and a good sense of the actual building itself, and that is Völuspá. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour around the park today. I really hope you've enjoyed diving back in and seeing what's going on. I'm going to be really pushing forward with this project in the next couple of weeks, so expect more updates very, very soon. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.